Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like MacVoices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we're back with another Take Control author. It seems like we've had a lot of them recently, but that's because they've been updating and releasing lots of new books on lots of topics that I enjoy and that I think you should know about too. This time, we get to talk to Mr. Michael E. Cohen. He's the author of the newly upgraded Take Control of Pages. Michael, welcome. It's great to see you.
Hi, Chuck. It's good to see you again.
It's always fun. And I'm really excited about this book simply because I perceive that Pages is getting better and getting better. I seem to be using it for more and more projects. I'm not sure if that's because it really is getting better or I'm just getting more comfortable with it. But at the end of the day, I find that Pages does a good 98% of what I really need, either a word processor or a page layout program to do. Am I overstating the case?
No, I don't think you are. In fact, that's what has been going on. A brief recap. A while back, Apple had Pages 4.3 or 4, something like that, which they also called Pages 99. It was part of the old iWorks, and they completely scotched the entire code base and rewrote it from scratch. And that came out as Pages 5. And when that came out, it had a lot of the features missing. And there was much crying and consternation heard across the land. But what Apple had done by rewriting it is they had brought Pages on the Mac completely in line and compatible with Pages on iOS. And they also built a web browser app that could edit Pages files off of iCloud live and in real time, and made them all compatible. So no matter which version you worked on, you wouldn't mess up your file. If you didn't have the font on iOS, it wouldn't change your fonts unless you told it to. When you went back to the Mac, the font would still be there, that sort of thing. But in the process, a lot of stuff was missing. A lot of stuff was not perfectly working. And it was a little bit creaky at the beginning. And that's when I wrote Take Control of Pages, the first edition of this book, and said, well, I'm going to cover all the versions because I'm an idiot. And we did that. We actually released the book in installments as I wrote it. And as I was adding installments, Apple was refining and updating the program. And by the time the first edition was done, I think we were at something like at Pages 5.2 or 5.3, and quite a bit had been restored, but not all of it. Big things missing included a favorite feature of people, text box linking, where you could have a text box on one page and link it to a text box on another page so it would overflow into that box. Great for building newsletters and pamphlets and that sort of thing. That was missing in Pages 5. And there were a lot of other things missing too. But anyway, we did that. And then Pages 6 came out, and I said, okay, I'm going to do a new edition, and I wrote a new edition. And right after I got that out, Pages 6.1 came out. So Apple kept upgrading it, and I was midway through a major revision when they came out with another major revision, which threw everything back to the beginning. One of the big things they did was completely change the iOS file system and how you interacted with it. And that meant a lot of the initial stuff in the book about how you open files and edit files had to be thrown out after I'd just redone all the screenshots and rewritten how it worked on iOS 10. iOS 11 screwed me up. So anyway, it took a while before I finally got to this book, which is Take Control of Pages, second edition, version 2.1. And it is, as far as I know, up to date with the current version of Pages. Although I am also convinced that within a week or 2 or 3, Apple's almost certainly going to come out with an update to screw me up again. Because they've been doing that with Pages. They've been making incremental updates to the Mac version, the iOS versions, and the browser version continually through this. But it's gotten to be a very rich and complex program now, with just full of features. Very few features are still missing. I think the only two I can think of offhand that a lot of people would really like to see are two-up editing, where you can see two pages up at the same time, side by side, two-page layouts. And the other thing is mail merge, integrated mail merge. You can do mail merge with pages and numbers and an Apple script, but it's nothing built into Pages to let you do mail merge. But other than that, this is a really powerful, feature-rich program.
I don't want to spend too much time on the history, but I do think it's important that that's a story that so many people seem to miss, because what you described happening with Pages is what happened with Keynote and with Numbers. That
Yep, exactly.
they took all of their entire productivity suite, tore it down to the ground, and rebuilt it. And that's no small thing. I mean, if you stop and think about it, it's sort of like taking your house and not doing a remodel, but doing a complete rebuild. Tear it all down, start over. And so naturally, there's certain things, and of course, to get it back out into the world and shipping, you're going to, the first iteration may be without all the windows installed, and certainly without the carpet put down. And that's not the best analogy in the world, but you get the idea.
Yeah,
and
it's still a little bit of a rough draft. One of the reasons they did that, and I think the biggest reason they did that, was iCloud. The whole idea behind the Pages revision originally, and what they continue to do, is make Pages available on all of your devices. There's a version of Pages on every Apple CPU that you can buy, pretty much. And even if you're on Windows, you can do it in a web browser. And it all depends on storing your stuff in iCloud, on your iCloud drive. And that means that you can get access to it from anywhere, from any device. And no matter if you're poking away at your phone or typing on a 27-inch iMac Pro, you're on the same file, you've got the same program, you're editing the same document. And iCloud is really at the center of all of this, and Apple is really pushing iCloud in a lot of ways. It's a moneymaker for them, to be honest, because that's where all the services come from. It comes through that channel. All the stuff that they sell, the movies, the books, and everything else, are tied into that iCloud, iTunes, iMedia infrastructure that Apple has.
But that's not a bad thing, just because.
No, it's not.
Well, and especially because it adds functionality. I mean, the only issue that I personally have with it, and I imagine some other people do, is that up until recently, I felt like I wasn't quite sure where my documents were stored in iCloud, because I couldn't really see them on my Mac. Obviously on iOS, whether it's an iPad or an iPhone, you open up the application, in this case Pages, and there they are. They're sitting there. And you could do that on the Mac too, but I couldn't go into the Finder and easily see where those documents are. And that always, just because I'm so steeped in the way I used to work, it always bothered me. But now that doesn't seem to be quite as big an issue.
No, that's because iCloud now appears in the Finder. Your iCloud drive is there, and there's a Pages app library right inside of your iCloud drive. It looks like a folder. It is a folder. I call it an app library because that's what Apple calls them. When you have an application that's designed to work through iCloud, an application can create a folder for itself and all of its documents that they call an app library, and the folder can say, I will let these kind of files in, but not that kind in. So if you open your Pages file, app library folder, all you'll see are Pages compatible files. You can't put anything else in there. But you can also put other folders on your iCloud drive as well. And in Pages on the Mac or iOS or in your web browser, you can go to any of those folders and get documents as well. But the Pages folder is where your Pages files are.
I have not tried it, but just for the sake of discussion, if I open the Pages folder that you just described on my Mac, and I try to put something other than a Pages document in it, it won't allow it, or it just
it depends on the type of file. You can put in like an RTF file, and it'll accept it because Pages can open those.
Right.
But if you try to put in, I don't know, some sort of like I'm trying to look at a form of file that you really couldn't open. I don't know, an application or something like that.
Right.
It would just say no. It wouldn't let you. You get a little, your cursor would have one of those little circles with a line through it over it saying, No. You cannot do that. I will not allow you to do that.
Okay. So I could throw, say, a graphics asset in, a JPEG or something like
I
that?
believe so. I would. You would have to really try.
Yeah.
And see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't, not that I've tried that, but because it just, now I just feel like, okay, I can see how many documents are in my Pages app library, and I know that they're there. And if I need to have something else, I can save it from Pages in there. But so I really haven't used the Finder to manage anything.
And you're not limited to there.
Not limited to.
And you're not limited to the Pages folder either.
From on which platform?
Any of them.
Okay.
If you're on iOS now and you open up the document manager in Pages, which is where you see your files, you can navigate up to a locations sidebar that says, oh, you want to look in your Dropbox? Fine. You want to look in your box share? Fine. You want to look on a shared disk? Fine. It will point you to other locations as well.
I see what you mean. Okay. Got it.
So you have a lot more control. In fact, one of the big things that happened in Pages, which took a lot of rewriting, in fact, throwing pretty much all of the stuff I had about iOS file management and rewriting it from scratch, is that they've got a very robust document manager, which will show you your files in alphabetical order and the folders within your Pages folder in, again, alphabetical or date order, and you can nest them as deeply as you like. Or you can go to a recents screen, which shows you files you've worked on recently, no matter where they are, and files that you may have shared with somebody. It lets you use tagging, so you can tag files and look for them through tags. You can mount favorite locations in that sidebar, so you can say, I want to look in the numbers folder a lot while I'm in Pages, so I'm going to make that a favorite, that sort of thing. The iOS 11 file management, the Files app in iOS 11 and the Pages file manager in iOS 11 are very, very, very similar. They're siblings. They're almost identical twins.
Okay. And, somehow we really haven't talked about the program. We've gotten off into the file management for the program, but this is part of that whole rewrite that goes back a ways.
Yes.
And if you haven't used Pages for a little while, this may, I'm not going to say it's confusing, but you just may not understand that some of those things have been solved, and now you just have to go and maybe, okay, so you're not looking in your Documents folder, you're looking in your iCloud folder. But other than that, it's not a lot different than the way it has been. It just forces you to keep things organized because of the capabilities of iCloud editing in a browser and in iOS.
That's right. And in addition, when stuff is stored in iCloud, it opens up Pages collaboration capabilities, real-time editing with more than one person at a time. I can create a Pages document in my iCloud drive, share it with you. You can open it in Pages in your browser or on iOS or on your Mac. I really don't care. And you can start editing that file while I'm still editing that file, and you will see my cursor and your cursor, and they will be color-coded. And we could each add comments to it as we're working, and the changes update in real time. And that's one of the big pluses of going to iCloud.
Okay, so let's make sure we're very clear on this, because I know that many of us are familiar with Dropbox files, and you end up with all these very strange conflicted file types. So you're saying that if I open up a Pages document and you and I are working on it at the same time, all our changes are being saved in real time, and it's saving it to the cloud as we do it. So no more conflicted documents.
You will see my work as I'm doing it. I will see your work as you're doing it. If you've used Google Docs and had two people editing a document at once, it's the same game.
Got it.
Except it's visually more attractive because Apple does that sort of thing. So, the colors are richer, the comment boxes in the margin, they're nicer. They have curvy little arrows that point to where they attach in the text, that sort of thing. It's got Apple's typical, attention to graphic detail.
Right.
But it's the same sort of thing as Google Docs in that sense. And that, by the way, is not just in Pages, but it's the whole iWork suite. You can collaborate on numbers documents as well. You can collaborate on Keynote documents as well. They're all designed to work with that core framework for collaboration through a browser, through iOS, through your Mac.
Got it. Okay, so let's dig into Pages itself, because this is a lot of time. Again, this is a lot of time on file management, but I think that's a good floor for folks to understand sort of why we took that couple steps back. We had to move forward, and now you have something that competes with Google Docs, and probably is, depending on how you're using Dropbox, may be superior to Dropbox. I think they introduced a collaboration tool as well that I don't have experience with. But at the end of the day, this is an Apple product, and that's kind of where you want to stay, I think. But that's
if you're using Pages, yeah. And it's a pretty powerful tool. So unless you've got very esoteric needs, it'll probably meet most of your word processing needs quite nicely.
So that brings me to it, Michael. What is it? Is it a word processor? Is it a page layout program? We've had part of this discussion before, but
is it a candy mint? Is it a breath mint?
Yeah, it's 2 mints. No, never mind. I was about to sing the jingle. What is it? How should people approach Pages when they say, "I need to do this project"? When should they think of Pages?
Anything you would use a word processor for, certainly. Many things you would use a page layout program for as well, because Pages is both a word processor and a page layout program. It has an architecture that allows you to do either. If you open up an ordinary document, you've got a main area for body text that flows from page to page to page, like every other word processor you've ever seen since time began. And that's the default way of using it. But you can also open up a new document, and on the format sidebar, there's a little checkbox you click that says Page Layout Document. That throws away that body text area, and you've just got a blank sheet. And now you can use it as a page layout program, putting text boxes here, text boxes there, a graphic element here, a graphic element there. And now with the current version of Pages, you can link your text boxes, so you can have like a story that begins on page 1 of your newsletter, jump you to page 5, and the text will flow into it. So if you want to do a page layout, a newsletter, a brochure, a flyer, Pages is also a good tool for that. It also has spreadsheet capabilities built in, so if you need to put in at least a chart or a graph or a table where the numbers are active and alive so you can edit them, you can add those in as well.
Okay, let's stay with that for just a second. So can I link a number spreadsheet in so that if I'm updating the number spreadsheet, it updates in Pages?
No, you can't. You can copy a table out of a numbered spreadsheet and paste it into Pages, and the data all comes along. But if you just need a table that's of reasonable size, that's not taking over the entire document, you can put a table right in Pages without ever going to Numbers, and it has rows and columns and almost all the formatting that Numbers has. It has a formula editor. You can also do charts that are attached to the table, so you can have like a pie graph attached to a table that will do all of that as though you were in Numbers. It's got a large part of Numbers functionality built into it.
Got it. But it's not a live link kind of thing.
No, it's not a live link kind of thing.
Okay, good. I wish people, and I'm thinking of a few people in my life in particular, would learn to use the page layout capabilities and stop trying to pretend that this is a word processor, like a bit like Word is, where you have a few page layout capabilities, but you usually end up trying to build things in tables and make them pretty. And with Pages, you've got all that power to put things exactly where you want them. Mm-hmm. Format them exactly as you want them. Individual table cells can have individual heights and widths easily. Mm-hmm. Michael, I'm almost convinced that with the exception of true, honest-to-God, genuine word processing, text processing, most people are better off having that page layout thing going, because those are the kind of documents a lot of us are creating more now.
Well, again, it depends on the kind of document you're creating. You can do either. You can have a document with flowing body text, as you've had all along with word processors, and still stick onto it additional text boxes that link from one place to another. and shapes and drawings and media, movies and sound and all sorts of things. And the current version of Pages has added in a shapes library, which is enormous and rich. Before, you had something like 15 or so shapes, a square, a rectangle, a star, and so on. And control points, you could manage them and change their look and feel. But now there's a huge library of all sorts of graphic images, including like a map of the United States. If you drag that out and stick it in your document, you can then break it apart into the individual state elements and do whatever you like with it. It's enormously rich.
I did not know that. That's something I could definitely use.
That's one of the new changes in the most recent version of Pages. I think it came out in Pages 6.1 or so. It's big.
So we're talking a lot about, I guess, some of the basic capabilities of Pages, but let's get into some of the changes that you've seen as you were trying to get this book out, because Apple kept updating things and adding things. What are some of your favorites, or you think the things that are most useful for the most of us?
Well, a thing that I have long missed and I'm so happy to have back, I've alluded to several times, and that's linked text boxes, just because it gives you a lot of freedom in formatting, when you need to have text go from one place to another, and several streams of text at once. Related to that is if you're editing a document collaboratively with someone else, you can comment on it and you can thread the comments. So you can reply to my comment and I can reply to yours, and that all builds up in the comment chain as you're collaborating on a document. The autocorrect capabilities have become much more expanded and more in line with the stuff that goes on in the Mac OS as well. So you've got a lot of control over autocorrect or auto text, that sort of thing. More export capabilities. At long last, you can now import RTF files. You couldn't do that for the longest time with Pages. Pages 5 and on, they've added that back in. So files that come from Microsoft Word, you can bring those in directly as doc files or docx files. Or if somebody's created an RTF file instead, well, you can bring that in as well, or you can export it as well. And again, the file management stuff, that's a big thing. And although it seems it's to be tangential to using the program itself, it really isn't, because documents don't stand alone usually. You bring in stuff from other documents, and you may open up other documents to reference as you're working. And so having that expanded file management capability on all the platforms that Pages runs on is a huge win. There's a lot of stuff that I love. I really do like using it. An ugly little secret is I can't write my take control books with Pages because we have a production chain that requires we use another fine word processor, Nicest Writer Pro, to do it. And Joe Kissel, who owns Take Control, is a master at macros and Nicest Writer. So that's a tool chain that really works for him and us. But if I just want to do word processing on my own, a flyer, a short document, I'll go to Pages because it's just a nice place to be. It looks good. It feels good. It does what I expect it to, and has a huge amount of power hidden away so that you don't have to have it in your face, but you can find it very quickly.
So let me hit a couple things that I know in the past I've heard people say about Pages and why they preferred maybe not to use it. Number one is in a business environment, they need to standardize on Microsoft Word, and bringing files into Pages and sending them back out to a Microsoft Word format was not always a seamless experience. Has it gotten seamless or close to it at this point?
It's gotten closer, but it never will be completely seamless because, Microsoft has their file format. Apple has to know enough about it to bring it into Pages and map everything in a Word file to what Pages can do, and then export it back into something that Microsoft can expect. And if you're using features that are in Word but not in Pages, you'll run into problems. You'll also run into problems if you're going for things like, fonts that are on one system or not another. So, that's just going to happen. Pages will do a great job at preserving font information. But it's, when you're coming from Word, it can be a little bit dicey still. And it always will be into any other word processor.
Yeah. And you led me into the second question because that was always the other discussion. But strangely enough, more within the Apple ecosystem itself, that if I open a document in Pages on my Mac and I've used certain fonts and then I move it over and start working on it on my iPad and then reopen it again on my Mac, that the font information got confused at best, lost at worst. Has that settled down a bit?
That's completely fixed unless you override it. If you open a document up in Pages on iOS that you don't have in iOS, Pages will tell you and let you see what those fonts are and choose to change them to something else or not, as you prefer. And as long as you don't edit a piece of text that uses those fonts and then apply a font style to it, it's not going to change the font. It will preserve them when you go back to the Mac.
Okay, just to make sure I heard it right. As long as I can edit it, I just can't change the font style or apply a new font style, and it'll be fine on the Mac. So if I see a typo,
it really should. Yeah, you can fix those typos.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right.
But also, the number of fonts that are available to iOS it's pretty large, and I think I have a link in the book somewhere to a list of the fonts. I don't know if it's still in this edition. I know I put it in at one point. But there's, we're talking dozens upon dozens of fonts that are available in iOS. It's not a small assortment.
Right. Yeah. There was a time it was a little bit of a limited subset, but not anymore. Not anymore. One feature I really enjoy about Pages and Keynote is the ability to drag some surprising graphics formats in. I can drag an EPS version of a logo in, and it handles it just fine. And I love that fact because, no more conversion to JPEG or something that is lossy or may not scale. This way I can drag any size logo in, rescale it to whatever I want, and I've got that nice, crisp, clean printout or resolution.
One of the things I like about Pages is how it handles the act of managing formatting with the sidebar. You have a sidebar on the right-hand side of the document, and that will show you all your formatting commands, and it's context sensitive. You click a graphic, you've got all the controls in the sidebar for handling graphics. You click in text, you've got all the controls and settings for handling text. It knows what you're working on and lets you adjust accordingly. And so there's a huge amount of power hidden there. And again, it's in your face or not because you can show and hide that sidebar at any time.
Yeah, that is something. The sidebar, I think a lot of people sort of resisted originally because you were taking up screen space, and everybody was used to the toolbars at the top. And Apple, to their credit, has resisted that desire that Microsoft, and I'm picking on Microsoft because they have toolbar upon toolbar upon toolbar to the point that half your screen
you've
is
got
taken
this
up.
much text room and this much toolbar room. I know. I've been there.
Exactly, and with the tabbed sidebar thing, it makes it so much nicer because if I want to focus on graphics work, I put that tab up. If I need to focus, to your point, on text formatting, I put that up, and all my controls are right there, and I really, really appreciate that fact. There are times I almost wish that they would let me do just a little more customization of the toolbar for those things that kind of cut across all the aspects. But I also value the fact that they don't, because then I would probably tend to clutter it up.
Yes. Well, what Pages had prior to version 5 when they did the complete rewrite is they had a bunch of separate little windows for handling fonts and handling page layout. You had a whole bunch of little windows that would appear on the side of the screen next to your document. That all got integrated into the Format and Document Setup sidebar, which can be shown or hidden. And again, a nice thing about that is if you look at a page, I don't know, here's like a page. It's taller than it is wide. And if you look at your Mac screen, it almost certainly is wider than it is tall. So if you want to show on a 27-inch screen, the entire length of the page, you can, and it's quite legible. But you've got all this space off to the side, so why not stick all the controls in a sidebar? It's not going to be taking away from the area you have to work on text. So it makes good use of the fact that your screen is horizontal and most page documents are vertical.
Yeah. I think that's why we see sidebars now in browsers and, of course, iTunes, although that's been a bit controversial. But, there's a lot to be said about sidebars, maybe even floating windows at times, but definitely the sidebar aspect.
Sidebar means, you always know where it is. Floating window, it can be anywhere.
Yeah, I've lost floating windows at times, and, sometimes you have...
Again, people like what they're used to using, so any change is going to make people go, oh my God, this is a disaster. It's the worst thing ever. They polluted the reservoir. I'll never drink again.
Yeah, and it's too bad because sometimes, and I would venture to say most of the time, these changes are made for good reason. There are times that Apple does seem to arbitrarily change things, like just about every software manufacturer. Let's not just say Apple, but usually there are some good reasons. I do feel like that Apple should not justify but explain their rationale, and if you don't agree with the rationale, well, okay, too bad. It's changed anyway, but at least you would understand.
I'm a little bit lucky in the fact that at one time I was, an actual working usability analyst. I had training in that. And so I can look at something like Pages and sort of reverse engineer in my head the discussions that possibly led up to a particular feature and how it's implemented. I'm going to be saying, well, they probably figured this and this and this, and that's why they did it this way. Most people take a look at an interface and say, that sucks. Nobody would do it when that nobody they're referring to is me. I wouldn't do it that way. and everybody sees the world through their own filter. So they're always making, their decision based upon what they think is the right way to do things. But you can't design software like that. You have to design software for other people, not yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. I did not know that about you, that you had that kind of training.
I have a rubber stamp that actually says usability analyst.
Well, there you go. So how does Pages stack up from a usability analysis? Is it as good as I tend to think it is? Now,
it's pretty good, but it suffers from one of Apple's big problems, and it's not just Apple. Everybody does it this way on their own platforms as well, and that's the mystery meat interface, where there's a lot of power hidden there, but you can't find it without poking around and looking at it. There are things you have to hover over before you see all the options. There's stuff that gets hidden because they don't want to clutter up the screen. And sometimes Apple's gone too far in that direction where there are controls that are hidden that you have to kind of dig deep to find. One of the biggest chapters in my Pages book is called, Where is Everything? And I think that's an important question to ask for almost any piece of rich, robust software that you would use, whether it's a word processor, spreadsheet database. We've all used those programs on various platforms throughout our lives. I was counting up once, and I've used at least 24 different word processors and text editors to do productive work in my life.
Wow. So
I've had to learn a lot of ways of doing the same damn thing. So the big question I always ask when I come to a new piece of software is, where is that control? I know there probably is one. I know there is that capability buried somewhere. Where did the people who designed this piece of software hide it in this one? And so that's my big chapter. Where is everything? Where are the font controls? Where are the style controls? Where's the ruler controls? That sort of thing. How do you get to them?
That might be one of the most important chapters in the book. And I'm very serious about that, because I'd love to tell you the story of what I was doing just last week when I was looking for a control in another piece of software, and you just know it's got to be there. And it took me, like 5 Google searches to finally find. Yeah, okay, what do you call it, and where do I find it? And once you know, it's great. But that goes back to the Microsoft Toolbar thing. Yes, it would be absolutely possible to put every single control on screen at once, and then you'd have no room for the project, and you'd have something that looks a lot more like the cockpit of a 747 that is...
A bunch of buttons and dials that do not, on the face of them, tell you what they do. They have a symbol or something, but who knows what that particular symbol means. Hell, we got symbols now for saving files that still show you, a floppy disk. click here to save a file. It has a floppy disk icon. And most kids looking at it going, well, Daddy, what's a floppy disk? What is that square funny thing?
Yeah. You're
They
right.
had this on that old Star Trek TV show you used to watch,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And that's why I always encourage folks to pay just a little bit of attention with the toolbar customization that Apple does give you, or for that matter, anybody, but in this case, Apple. There are certain things that you can add to your toolbar that you use frequently, or at least I use frequently, that I want up there in my command. Yeah, there are a few things I wish they would let me put in the toolbar, but so far they haven't. And all right, that's okay. That's their call. But you can definitely enhance the usability if you add what you use. But please, be like a butcher, man, and cut out what you don't use, because just because they put it up there, it may be a function that you never use. So just take it out. You can go and find it when you need it.
The problem is at least threefold for Pages, because I have to describe where everything is on the Mac, where it's one place. In iOS, where it could be in one of two places, depending on whether you have a large screen or a small screen device, because the interfaces are close but not quite identical on an iPhone, for example, than on an iPad. And then in the web browser, where you have most of the controls that are similar to the Mac, some that are similar to iOS, but they're, again, not identical. So I have to answer the question, where is everything for all of those platforms? And it meant I learned a lot.
And it's not fair to expect something to look on an iPhone the way it does on your Mac screen. I mean, come on,
You don't want it to look the same way.
Exactly.
It's an entirely different interaction model.
Exactly.
When you poke at something with your fingers, it's not the same as using a separate keyboard and a trackpad. When you've got a 27-inch screen, it's not the same as a 10-inch screen.
Michael, let's go in that direction a minute. So let's leave the iPhone out of it, or at least until later. But if I'm using Pages to create documents, do you feel like the iPad version of Pages is up to the task at this point? I mean, we hear so many things about people trying to replace their laptops with iPads, which I'm on record as stating I think that's not the best way to look at this.
That's a question. My answer is no, you shouldn't.
Amen.
It's not an either or, it's a both and.
Right.
You want to have both. Pages on iOS, whether phone or iPad, is up to creating most of the stuff most people want to do. You don't have as much power on iOS. If you have a document where you have a lot of custom styles, you can't create custom styles for something in iOS. You can do it on the Mac, and then those styles will be available when you open the document on iOS. But you want to start off with the Mac. So if you're designing something from scratch, I'd start on the Mac first. And when you've got the bare structure of your document ready to roll, then you can go on and happily edit it in iOS, for a long time, quite productively. But if I'm starting off with something brand new, a newsletter layout or what have you, I'd start on the Mac first. Do that sort of basic architecture there. And then to fill it with content, I'll go to my iPad, or I'll even go into a web browser if I'm, in a public library somewhere. I can log into my iCloud again, that sort of thing.
Is that a failing of the iOS version, or do you think that's just that's what the iOS version should be, at least given today's world, today's processors?
It's not a failing so much as a limitation. It's one of those things that, in order to add the ability to create styles in iOS, you don't have to have access merely to the data. You have to have a user interface for doing it. Designing a user interface that's easy to use and easy to teach people how to use, that scales on a phone screen or an iPad screen, is not simple. And so if you don't have to solve that problem immediately, they don't. You've got only so many engineers who can work on a product at any time before you've got so many people working. Nobody communicates with anybody else. Those are the limits. Too many people. Too many cooks spoil the broth. You can get away with a chef, a sous chef, and another sous chef, but once you've got 20 people in the kitchen, it's chaos.
Yeah, and there are times that you look at sophisticated software like Pages, like Numbers, like Keynote, like Final Cut, like Microsoft Word, like Excel, and you think, gee, it is kind of a wonder that they keep it all working as well as they do, because it's just not possible for 1, 2, or even 10 or 20 people to be working on this software and have it all come out. I mean, they would have no lives. They get nothing else done, and heaven forbid if somebody got a cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, anytime you add a new feature on a particular platform, you have to think about how would I represent and implement that feature on another platform on which the software runs. They've got a complexity problem, and I'm impatient. I would like to see more capability in the iOS version than it has already. But it already has more than enough for me to do quite productive work with it. But to say, well, I can throw away my Mac now is ludicrous. I would not do that. I can just say, well, now that I've got this iPad, I can take these documents and work on them at the beach, which is a mile and a half down the road from where I am right now. So.
I'm looking out my window. There's nothing that looks even remotely beach-like out there. And to be fair, and this kind of takes us back to the beginning about why the book took so long to get out. Apple has continually added features to every aspect of Pages and to all the other suites,
yes,
all the other aspects of the productivity suite, but to Pages in particular. So
and they will do it, in iOS, then they will do it on the Mac, then they will do it in the web browser version. So there's a lot of places where it will just change underneath your feet.
Okay, so I was going to wrap it there, but that brings up an interesting question. That I've got one friend who is very critical of the Mac because critical of Apple because they are not consistent with things across all the platforms. Mm-hmm. Sometimes those issues are hardware, sometimes they're software. Again, should Apple be withholding things until it can roll it out on all platforms, do you think? Or do you think it's okay to say feature X, we're going to start with Mac, then we move it to iOS, or at least to the iPad, then to the phone, or to iOS, and then to the web? I mean, does that introduce inconsistencies that disturb you?
It can. I think Apple's being smart about how they're handling the iWork suite, certainly. They realize that the iWork suite on the Mac is a sweet suite. But they also realize that they have tens and tens of millions of users who are on other devices that they also manufacture who want to be part of the party. So they have to provide something that works well for them. And so they're working with due deliberate speed. And from Pages 5 on, they've tried to make very sure that no matter what change they make to Pages on any one particular platform, won't screw up your document should you open it up on another platform. So they've been working cautiously and deliberately and incrementally at a significant rate, quite honestly. If I look at Pages now and as it was when 5 came out, it's enormously improved. But you have to have been watching that evolution to see just, how it came about. Yes, Apple could do a better job on some things. We can all do a better job on some things. But in the case at least of Pages and the iWork suite generally, they've done a pretty fine job. I'm more than impressed. Yes, I will have quibbles with all sorts of little details. There's things you can tell me about, and I'll say, yes, it's a shame that Apple did this or Apple did that. But generally speaking, I think that this is a really powerful suite of applications, and people don't realize just how good it is.
And let's not forget that the price is right on this.
It's free. That's right. You get a Mac, you got Pages, you got Numbers, you got Keynote. Oh, you buy an iOS device, you got Pages, you got Numbers, you got Keynote. You have a web browser and an iCloud subscription. You've got Pages, you've got Keynote, you've got Numbers.
Yeah, don't overlook that, folks. And by all means, if you found Pages wanting in the past for your particular projects or what you need to do, give it another look. I just see it getting better and better. Michael just confirms that I'm not crazy, that it is getting better and better.
Well, I can confirm that you weren't crazy, but you're not crazy about this, at least.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cohen.
One thing that Apple has done with Pages as well that I think is very smart, and not a whole lot of the general public is aware of it because they don't need to be. They've made Pages and Numbers and Keynote and some of their other applications, but these three in particular, as sort of examples of how you can do things in the iCloud world. There is much examples of how to produce collaborative software or software that scales on different devices with different interaction methods. Pages is as much a powerful suite of applications as it is a demonstration of how to make multi-platform applications. It's something, that when they have a developers conference and developers say, how would I do this on the iPhone? They say, well, here's how we solve that problem with Numbers across these platforms. So it's a big example in that sense. And that's not to be discounted. It's a model.
Yeah. So we have to tell folks that we are recording this before the publication. The publication of the book is imminent, but the final pricing has not been determined. Michael, is it fair to say that the final upgrade pricing has also not been determined? Because this is a new version, is it not?
It may have been determined, but I haven't talked to Joe yet about what that is.
Okay.
I do know that the book used to sell for $20 because it was huge. But I think Joe has decided, I'm not completely sure, but I think the price for new purchases will now be $14.99. That's what he's done with other long books. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Pages selling for that as well to new users. To people who bought the 2.0 edition, the second edition 0.0, if you will, I think they're going to get a free upgrade to this. If you bought the Pages 1 book, there may be an upgrade price, but I don't know what that is. But again, it's in Joe Kissel's bailiwick, not mine. But whatever it is, I just want to take the royalty checks.
So by all means, folks, if you have the Pages book already or a version of the Pages book, use the usual method, the usual take control method to check for updates. Mm-hmm. If you don't, you can buy it whatever the bottom line price ends up being at takecontrolbooks.com. And as far as I'm concerned, the chapter on what was it, Michael? Where is everything?
Where is everything?
Yeah, that's the one that I'll probably be opening first if and when I need a feature, because that's golden right there. Because
it's about a 285-page book in manuscript now, and the Where Is Everything chapter clocks in at roughly 70 or 80 pages because there's a lot of answers to the question because there's a lot of everything to cover.
Yeah, that may be, again, my favorite part of the whole book. Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
Michael, I want to make sure folks can know where to find you to ask questions or just see what else you're up to. What are the best places to contact you?
Well, let's see. I'm to be found at lyman@mac.com, which is my personal email address that I've had for ever since they had the Mac.com addresses. It goes back that far. That's LYMOND. I'm also Lyman on Twitter. You can also find me at mcohen@tidbits.com. Send me email there. If you're walking down the street in Santa Monica and you're near, Lincoln and Wilshire, I'm just a couple blocks away, so you can find me there.
We won't. No addresses, please. We don't want to help the stalkers any more than we already have.
There's some very nice places to have coffee nearby.
Okay. Michael, thank you. I'm getting in the habit of thanking you, not just for this interview, but also thank you for all the work that goes into this book, because the Take Control books are just an invaluable resource, at least for my projects, to get more out of these programs. And I know that it takes more than a little time to put them together. So thank you.
Oh, boy, howdy. On the other hand, I will say that every time I do one, I learn a huge amount. So,
yeah. And folks, you can learn what Michael learned if you just go and buy the book. Michael, thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
I'm looking forward to it.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. Again, Pages is free, folks. It's sitting right now on your Mac or iOS device or in iCloud, just waiting for you. Go check it out. See what you can do that you really didn't know you could do with it before. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Mac Voices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep Mac Voices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.